All right. Welcome, 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 welcome. So let me get the timer going here. Okay. I just shaved. My beard was like so long, so scratchy. I think it actually is affecting my, not affecting my readings, but I was like, scratching every few minutes. All right. Dive in. Okay. hmm Okay. So let's open this up. Okay. Wait, hold up. All right, so we have here, let me change the name, but a chart with a Sag, Sun, and Moon on the midheaven, both. Pisces rising 0 degrees. I keep getting. Wait, let me change the name. Okay. All right, let's share the screen. Well, here we are. So first thing that is very, very obvious is karmically, there's always, I mean, it's not always so obvious, but there's always some axes, right? There's six axes in astrology for all the opposite signs: Aries, Libra, um, Aquarius, Leo, or Taurus, Scorpio, Aquarius, Leo, and so forth. Pisces, Virgo, Sag, Gemini, Cancer, Capricorn, and when you have, so one of the ways I really look at astrology is those are six of the divine. Um, yeah, those are six of the divine balances that a human is meant to kind of find the right balance to, because they're all polarities, right? I think of them all on lines of 0 to 100. For example, on in your chart, you see all that Sagittarius, right? That's an extreme on one side of the Sagittarius Gemini axis. So what does that mean? Um, well, we look into it deeper. We see your North Node is in the North Node in astrology. Obviously, is not obviously everyone, but just it represents the where's my water? Kind of the karmic mountain never climbed in past lives, or where the soul is trying to get to in this lifetime, right? But where there's been kind of some trouble. One second, I need to find my cat Mika. Mika. Where's Mika? Hold on. Sorry. The Catherine Fresh era. There's this thing that Mika jumps over. You see, make sure she's not on the other side of it. Mika. 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 Okay, hold on. Okay, well, my Zoom died, but Mika popped up, so we are good. Now I just have to close this area off. Headaches out. Headaches or headaches. Okay, we are good. Mika, you scare me even though you didn't do anything. All right. My freaking, I have to use my hotspot. My computer won't connect to the Wi-Fi up here. That's what was wrong. Okay. Connect. There we are. So as I was saying, the Sagittarius aspect of your chart is very, very predominant, right? Your South Node is in Sagittarius, and your Moon and your Sun. South Node represents like the karmic tendency, right? Um, so in your case, it is to be, and it's in the 10th house, so it's very active, it's very kind of adventure oriented, and when you're a double Sag, you especially in the 10th house, like there's really this innate sense of adventure that runs through your soul that is so, it's so easy for you to understand. And sometimes it can be dumbfounding when you connect with other people and you're just like unable to, like people who are just unable to kind of see reality, right? And then you have this grand trine in Earth between Uranus, Jupiter, and well, I guess it doesn't really connect on one side with Mercury, so never mind. And I wouldn't count like Ceres in a grand trine. But I mean, like if you were to like some like Haley would definitely I think count Ceres in a grand trine. Especially it's not the apex. Um, it just shoots out at this, Uranus conjunct Pluto, conjunct Mars, this part of your chart in your 7th house, which is very practical, but also very innovative. It is very relationship oriented. So that's like one block of your chart, like a seventh house, and then there's like this big block in the 10th house. And that's like the majority of your chart, right? Like if you took away the seventh and 10th, there'd be Mercury, Saturn, Chiron, Jupiter, Venus. So, and is this? I need to move away these. Wait, what's presenting? Oh, okay, my face. Bending it went up. Okay, so I need to move away these for a second. Let's see. So okay, so now this is what I use. These are the only points I use for aspect patterns. Okay. I'm not good with the names of them, but I know the meanings. That's interesting. Look at that. The node, I don't count the node. I don't know why it's in there. Okay, so yeah, it's Venus opposite Jupiter, and the Jupiter trines Mars, the Venus sextiles Mars. So let's get out of here. I need to remember the name of the test. There's so many of them. God, here it is. Okay, yeah, so it is triangle of potential. All right. And then is that the only one? Hmm, it's interesting. It's like it found it in Romanian. Okay, here's one. So, yeah, the plane of the apex of the trines it has the key to solving the opposition. Okay, obviously, but this it will experience struggles, but by utilizing the energy of the trine and sextile, we'll be able to make them work. So, speaking in many respects, the hard aspects are what motivates us. Blah 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 blah. It'll give a person just enough friction to utilize latent talents and abilities that otherwise might lie dormant. Okay, so here we have obviously Saturn opposite Venus, so or Jupiter opposite Venus, which isn't that hard, or slash Neptune, so it's not even that hard of an aspect, that opposition. Um, and yeah, so that wouldn't even like really put that much weight into that one. If it was like Saturn opposite Venus, um, then it's different, right? Okay. So, anyways, Sag moon, your moon is like conjunct my moon exact, nearly 2 degrees off. But double dose of it, and the fact that it's on, the sun is 2 degrees from the midheaven and it's on the south node. Um, it's very interesting because you want, the point of astrology, right? Of the reading is for you to understand the energies that are playing out and how to get to where the chart is trying to get you to, right? So your chart is no easy task. Also Saturn rising, it's 29 degree Saturn rising, but and the reason it is, and I always say that when I see this kind of thing, it always makes me think of like an evolved soul, or someone that's chosen, who's dealing with a lot of karma in this lifetime, especially with all those hard aspects. And one of the reasons is because your Sag energy, right? It's such a a prominent part of who you are in this lifetime, and you're trying to become more. Your North Node's in Gemini and air, but you have no air, right? There's no air in your chart. So when the North Node is not supported by anything, it's to me a clear indication that the person is going to have to develop capabilities that don't come natural to them. And Mercury, ruling your North Node is in Capricorn, conjunct Black Moon Lilith. Yeah. Um, so, this can definitely in Palace there too. It can definitely like this is definitely like someone who can affect others very deeply with their words, and who, you know, has like a very authoritative kind of, someone who's very in their power, very, very in their power. And you know, they have to, like, if this is like the kind of chart, oh my God, my freaking cat bed. The kind of chart I see with, people like really, really big into like activism or different causes, that they care a lot about. Being the double Sag, um, can create that energy of, not fanaticism. That's like the not because that's like a negative connotation, but I mean, I guess at the low vibe of Sag, there can be a level of dogmatism and a level of like, even though it's this really open-minded sign, I've seen Sag people be very, very, very opinionated, and they spend a lot of times developing these opinions, right? Like in these philosophies, that sometimes there can be like some like a push, um to get other people to kind of see it how they do, right? And to have an air north node with all this. Now, I think that not every axis is obviously created the same. And the one of Sag Gemini is about communication, and Gemini is more of the lower mind, Sag is more of the higher mind, right? So with this configuration, and it's in the fourth house, there's a past life tendency to be very much like in the public eye, very much involved with, hey Esme, with the Dharma, with whatever you're doing on like big picture. Um, but sometimes there can be a difficulty in seeing other people's point of view. And with the palace, Mercury, Black Moon, Lilith all together in Capricorn, right? Definitely, especially unaspected Mercury. Besides that, it's very intelligent person. Um, but like I like the stereotype of Sag being like very blunt and just kind of boom, like saying it how they see it. I feel like that, could be very prominent. Um, and basically fourth node Gemini is very interesting. It's like it combines Cancer, the moon, the emotions, and Gemini, right? So Gemini is about seeing life from other people's point of view, right? Um, and it is really, and it shows with the Mercury conjunct and Lilith, which kind of shows how um there sometimes is a need to refine. There's a need in this lifetime to refine the communication, methods of communication, and also to not, there can also be a tendency to be a little bit restless, a little bit scattered in terms of like where the energy goes. It can be, I just think in general, like regardless of which one, like of these two, you know, whichever one is South Node, whichever one is North Node, there is that tendency, there is that need to look at, for example, Gemini would be the journalist metaphorically within all of us, right? We watch the news, we take in different information, and the Gemini North Node person is meant to kind of really go out in the world and hear, at least hear out all different kinds of people, you know? And then when they really figure out like what it is that they want to kind of put their energy towards, to sometimes the sad, like the very sad person can be like the jack of all trades, master of none, right? So it's about learning to focus on one or a few things of importance, and yeah, like sticking to that. But more on that later. And before that, I guess I'll just say that fourth house, like North Node in the fourth house, South Node in the 10th house, just by itself, um, there we're trying to find more. We're trying to develop like a deeper spiritual relationship with ourselves. Um, we're trying to find to create this balance between the external, right, and the internal, between work, career, dharma, what you do in the outer world, and home, family. So there's been a definite prioritization on the more external public, right? So the moon in Sag ultimately is all about freedom. Um, it gives someone a superpower. I always well, to my Sag moon clients, I always kind of say we have the best moon sign. Like, I'm not gonna say it's someone doesn't have a Sag moon, but there's three very difficult aspects. Now, because you have sun and moon close together, they all affect both your sun and your moon because you're born, right after a new moon, which also speaks to the karma of this lifetime. And just like a new moon in each lunar cycle represents a time for a new intention, a new quest. It's the same thing for this lifetime. But when you have a lot of energy in one area, um it can make it difficult to be, to kind of round out the personality, right? I find this with myself having no earth in my chart, right? So just from that basis of the elements, you have a bunch of fire. So no worries there about finding your passions, about, you know, uh, being able to kind of kickstart yourself in any kind of time. I mean, you do have Saturn on the ascendant, which could have impeded some action for the first 30 years or so. Um, but ultimately creates a responsible person in a 0 degree. There's something very mystical about a 0 degree Pisces rising, right? Um, because Pisces rising, it's one of the areas in Pisces rising are the two rarest rising signs. And it creates a chameleon. So the external self is like a chameleon, right? Can shapeshift. And when Neptune rules your chart from, is it this? Where is it? It's hiding. Yeah, from the ninth. There's a need to, in a conjunct Venus in Scorpio. So there's a need for that person to have their philosophies, their guiding life philosophies and grand truths, right? Which will be deeply spiritual. And also might add that conjunction of Neptune and Venus is like the most creative aspect in astrology in my mind, because it is the fusing of Neptune, which is like the inspiration, right? It's like the imagination. Like I always say this, like Van Gogh, he had to have the inspiration, the imagination to have the idea of the painting. And then Venus is the actual ability to do it, right? But then there's also a psychological, like everything has like a physical, psychological um basis of, or breakdown to it. Um with the Venus Neptune, well, there's like a lot. um so that's good. Now also it can create sort of a vagueness when it comes to, who the person is in what they value, but then the fact that the personality, the sun is on the midheaven, which oftentimes I see in the charts people who either, have powerful fathers or whose fathers, played like a big time role in their life. But a lot of times I see it in, like, I don't know, I've seen a lot of like very, very like powerful like politicians and big business people, stuff like that. But then I've also seen just people who just like, were very influential into like as to the forming of that person's kind of public domain, public name, public self. Um, but yeah, the Venus and Neptune together up there opposing Jupiter. It can create a and like if we used series, it would create a kite. But yeah. Um it can it when it can definitely make love, like relationships, like can be difficult. Um there can be like this very like the kind of like pink cloud phase can be very, very, very alluring. Especially in Scorpio, the Venus. So with anyone who has that, like it's really, really important to um go into any kind of romantic situation with ease, to not go too fast because one can be, blinded um by kind of like the fogginess that Neptune can create. And there can be like a pattern where the person yearns for romance so much, right? And they're seeking this like very ideal and perfect partner, but it's the complete, Disney fantasy, right? And um there can be like lots of disillusionment once the relationship becomes ugly, and or once there's fights, and um it can also create a level of escapism just in general, and a need to kind of face one's own imperfections. And until one does that, they will, there can be a tendency to project um their own imperfections that they haven't like accepted into themselves, right? Onto other people. Like for example, if the person um hasn't accepted that they are not a weak person, but let's just say like a sometimes I don't know, someone prone to even this tendency in itself, um and especially with all the squares to the moon, let's say like square moon square Pluto, right? Moon square Chiron, especially Sun squaring all those as well, Uranus, Pluto, and Chiron. Um, that can lead to that being to lots of projection in relationships, which is also shown by the Mars in the seventh house, how and Pluto in the seventh house. So yeah, that's a theme I see. Um, is kind of like Virgo seventh house stellium could definitely, yeah, definitely lend itself to this real kind of perfectionism when it comes to love and finding a partner and whatnot. So yeah, mm, but yeah, just overall, like the double Sag, it can it's just the person is such a philosopher, like and just a natural philosopher. It's just they can have a lot of clarity in their thoughts. And it's all about seeing the big picture. all about seeing the big picture, which sometimes can make them, um, just not interested in the details, just like Sag, like, all, yeah, just like, let's just, like, sometimes there can be like some forgetfulness, but then when you have that Mercury in Capricorn, that will lend itself to a lot of um precision, actually. So it will help a lot of that Sag, help ground some of that Sag energy out. Um, but yeah, like, Sag is the teacher, it's the philosopher. So um there is a lot of leadership potential there. But and as I was saying earlier, like it can be like it can be, I've seen it play out in two different ways. Either like so open-minded that it's like to an extreme, or like super like dogmatic, like super just like these are my philosophies. Like they're just like, this is it, um, and trying to like shove it on other people, right? With all that fiery enthusiasm. Um, but generally what I see is that it's someone who, likes to, like, I'm a Sagittarian, right? So um like the very Sag, charts I've done and I've talked to people, they typically have this real ability to kind of be on that metaphoric mountaintop and actually be really open-minded. That I've seen that more. And you know, that's kind of the beauty of it, the mutability, right? The fire, immutable fire, is that it can change. It's open, it's open to changing its mind. It's not just like set. Um, so yeah. Obviously with Sagittarius, traveling is something that is just, so natural to the soul. You might it's like essential to the soul for Sag moon. So settling down can be hard. There's just so much of like that freedom loving nature in your soul. And when you combine it with what I was saying before, um, it can be difficult because, no human is perfect, right? Um, and you know, the right type of partner would be obviously be one that doesn't try to contain you, that just kind of like allows that kind of expansive, you know, just energy to just go. Um, but I think with double Sages, the more spiritual they get, the more they get into the metaphysics, things like astrology, the more clear their mind becomes. Um, so it's like very important, what philosophies you choose. Like I have one person in mind, who, you know, he was always very open minded, and he kind of became like a Jehovah's Witness. Um, and it's similar energy, right? Where it's like he, and of course he had aspects in his chart that you don't have. So, don't worry. Like I feel like for you, like it's like, um, with the Black Moon Lilith, with that Capricorn Mercury, you're very much in your power, very much like a female in this lifetime that can really, really make make her mark and has like a huge presence, right? And if you add the high vibe of a 0 degree Pisces rising, with the fact that it's a new moon, I think of, like the metaphor of like new horizons, in this lifetime, and a lifetime of taking your past life philosophies, but in this life, trying to hear out other people's. Even if in your head, like, so it's like sometimes there's like a need to kind of separate from what can happen with sometimes with double Sag, it's very Saggy people, which can be like, it's almost like a philosophical ego, um, and like a certain restlessness, right? Impatience. Um, so yeah, I think that like obviously Sagittarius is linked to high religion. So some people who have lots of Sag can become very, very like dogmatic in that sense. But I associate Sag with, just as much with the religion. I mean, religion in the end is spirituality. So Sag is about truth. So you are about the truth, and your soul is about the truth. You've incarnated as someone who has a tendency to seek the truth, right? Um, so that can take you all over the world. It can take you to all different types of teachers, so much curiosity. Um, and there's also like, because there's such like a big picture kind of energy, like there can be like yeah, like kind of, it's important to kind of like remember that not everyone can see things the way you can see them. Trust me, I've had like those struggles where um I just, you learn something that's so empowering, right? Because knowledge and wisdom are ultimately everything, and you want the people that you love to, to also believe in that and to also have that in their lives, right? So um you can just like battle, 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 but then you realize, you can't, everyone has to come to their own truth, their own time, right? Um, so, also Sag, it's very like, laughter is very important. Sag are known for their sense of humor, and kind of not like, they can be like life at the party. Um, and lots of enthusiasm, ultimately, a lover of life, and they kind of bring this zest. So that's kind of, one of the kind of higher manifestations of that, right? Where'd the chart go? Okay. Now, with the sun and moon both making these squares, right? So it's from the 7th to 10th house. First, we just have to think, okay, what's the nature of those two stelliums, right? So if the Sag stellium is your sun, your moon, and it's with your midheaven, right? In your south node. So it's like how a lot, like, your two most important planets have a tendency to go into that area of career, that area um of external life. And at the same time, I don't want to I don't even want to say that that's not what, in a sense, like with your sun in the 10th, like, it's not like you're meant to just like not do that, right? Like, wherever your sun is placed is a arena of life that you're meant to shine in, and wherever your moon is placed is an arena of life that you have a big emotional attachment to. So you know, that is your 10th house. So I'm not saying don't be like that, discard that, be, go totally into the home, and um lock yourself up, you know. No, it's just about balance, right? And it's just about um balance and finding ways to communicate because um and it shows, with that Black Moon Lilith Mercury, right? Black Moon Lilith, right? I was talking to Haley about this last night. Um, there's a lot of different ways to look at it, right? It's the repressed feminine, but and we were trying to come up with like an integrated kind of definition because, and you know, I think that with with Mercury conjunct Black Moon Lilith, it's like in a sense it can be like your greatest downfall and your greatest asset, right? So, the way you communicate, the way you think is so uninhibited, right? That like already a double Sag can just blurt things out and be very blunt and then just like not think about like the repercussions of what they said. Um, which, you know, um, yeah. But with this, um, I think it just makes one a very vocal supporter um of the things that they support, that they believe in. Um, someone who's very strong with their words. And I've been in the around someone who has an aspected Mercury. She's like this astrologer, and she would just like say things, like, but when you have unaspected Mercury, sometimes it's like a government. It's like without any dictator, right? Um, or it's like a government without any checks or balances, right? So it can just go. So yeah, it can make one very extra strong with their words, and as you know, Capricorn can be quite cold and but also very, very stern and very, very authoritative. And having a very strong Saturn like you do, it's almost like your word is the law. You could be like a judge or have that energy, right? So it gives very, very powerful opinions and ideas. So you're here to learn how to, be more to have like a level of diplomacy with respect to that. Because like there can be like lots of opposition from other people to some of the opinions you might hold, right? Um, so there's a need to kind of go through the shadow to kind of uncover um everything. Um, and I think like for you, it's just like this deep, deep search and expansion in your soul. This lifetime expansion of just exploring so much, learning so much, listening to so much, gathering. So that's like the goal, like to gather so much information, right? And to update, to constantly update, and to not shut ideas down like from the get go. to just be open to them, you know? Even if it's like someone, yeah, like I said, like even if it's someone who you know, intuitively you're like, oh, that person's not gonna add shit to me. Like you know, synchronicities, like sometimes like everything and everyone in life can be a teacher. Everyone, everything, right? Like for example, let's say you're very, very liberal or very conservative, right? Politically. Um, Going and listening to and trying to understand how someone who's like, if you're, let's say, very liberal, let's say someone who's very conservative, um, kind of like trying to understand where they come from, right? Trying to understand like what, what, you know, what drives them, why they are the way they are. I did this a few years ago, right? Um, and I'm not, you know, identified with any political party, and I grew up, you know, in a very democratic. I never had anything really pushed on me, especially religion. But, you know, my mom is very like she's always had NPR on, um, read the New York Times. Great person. I'm not saying anything. um, I'm just saying that I at some point had to kind of I had a friend, this black dude, Ed, smart guy, um in Boulder, and he posted once, you know, because obviously Boulder super liberal. Um he posted something that was like, you know, I wonder what like because I'm so like it was something like I'm because I'm so dumbfounded by not dumbfounded. Let me try to actually remember exactly what he said. It was basically like, you know, like I want like the essence was I want to understand where very, you know, conservative Republican people come from. So I'm going to go on a quest for like, you know, I forget if he said it was like a few months and dive head into literature and popular podcasts and just try to even talk to some people. Like I want to know, I want to understand it, right? So that is kind of like that approach, right? And I did the same thing. Um, I, you know, always believe that the truth is somewhere in between two extremes, often. Um, and as a Sag moon myself, you know, I am a constant seeker of truth. Now you have sun and moon there, so it's double, right? So that Jupiterian energy, it can be so massive, and there can be this like on the low side, this like kind of hungry ghost expansionism where like nothing is ever enough, you know? So grounding becomes very, very important. That's where your seventh house comes in, right? Um, so I think you have a very, you know, like I said, very powerful, very unique voice. And I think that you could really excel in anything related to using that voice, like being like a speaker, of some sort, someone who kind of who uses their voice to really stand up for what they believe in. The idea of trials and errors is very, very, very prominent. But overall, you know, there is going to be like a deep rebelliousness. Now we'll get into these aspects. Don't worry. But the key to remember is that there can sometimes be like a bluntness to, you know, words said that the double sag might, because there is that tendency to gloss over the details, you know, might not realize the impact it leaves on other people, right? So Lilith gives us that ability, you know, like, so it can be like coming off too strong when speaking, not letting other people kind of have their turn. But these are just potentials, right? Lilith isn't a planet. So when integrated, and this is like kind of what me and Haley were talking about last night, you know, you can become just like a absolute master. And that's what you're trying to become in this lifetime, right? But to become that, you have to really go deep into yourself, right? Into your own emotions. And find that compassion. And to the point of what I was saying before, right? Everyone has their own journey, you know, and perhaps, you know, in past lives you've taken more risks, and you've been on more adventure, and you know, you've excelled more than others because your soul has this youthful kind of exuberant energy to it that's willing to just say fuck it, like let's do it, you know, let's try it. When I read someone who has, you know, South Node and Taurus, and, you know, all this, you know, square, you know, like just all this energy in their chart karmically that shows that they um you know, didn't excel, um and didn't take any risks, and now they're here to do that. That's not you, my friend. That's not you. um so I just want to kind of, you know, put that out there before I get into like this part. um Also, well, before that, uh I must say 29-degree Saturn. Wow, you have the exact same. That's so crazy. You have the exact same Saturn as my brother. You guys were born like exactly one Saturn return apart. He's born 93. Um, so that's interesting, isn't it? So you just had your second Saturn return. Interesting. Um, but to have it in the 12th, it can create all kinds of issues early on, especially, you know, it's conjunct the ascendant. So you know, related to self-expression, related to um, you know, feeling like it, it can give someone kind of the appearance, even as a Pisces rising, which I said is the chameleon, right? The person who can just like shape shift in any environment. Boom, like business on this person. Okay, boom. Uh, Now I'm around spiritual people. I'm like, and it's not fake. It's actually a superpower. Um, it gives, you know, very beautiful eyes. Pisces rising. I'm not someone who usually talks about like the appearance of rising signs. It's not my specialty. Um, but let me tell you, Pisces rising have this. It's almost like you can see like the universe in their eyes. Drop some mic. And my cat Esme is a great example of that. Esme, of course, now she's looking away. Um, So at the same time, on that kind of so another theme of your chart is identity issues, right? Because Chiron in the first in Pisces, um, you know, with Saturn the 12th, a serious examination of the occult, the esoteric is very, very beneficial. Um, but 12th house Saturn people, they can fear anything hidden. Like usually, so, there's some issue with boundaries, like feeling like the boundaries were constant, maybe when they're growing up were constantly threatened. And the more they can examine, the underlying energies, esoteric, like kind of spiritual energies, the better off they are. So just wanted to say that. But yeah, on the ascendant, it can be rough because it can make that person, especially as a kid growing up, just come off way more serious than they actually are, which, maybe it's not so bad in your chart because you're like, I mean, like you're a double Sag, right? Pisces rising. So it's all mutable. You're such a go with the flow type person. And Saturn kind of like probably for the first 30 years held you a little bit in check, but then people get to know you and then they're like, oh, this person is very open-minded, very, very free flowing. And so the Saturn there in a lot of charts, it can create someone who kind of like can have like almost like a depressing like like vibe to them that's like too responsible and kind of a buzzkill. But when you're double Sag, like and it's Pisces that's rising, it's not it's different, right? Um but yeah, I think 12th house Saturn there, it does, so Sag, so there is a lot of loyalty in your chart, right? Sag, I wouldn't say is known for loyalty, but Scorpio Venus, yeah. And then Saturn 12th house also very faithful. Um, and deep, deep interest in like, the occult, right? So yeah, it creates a dreamer, and like, like all this energy in your chart, like it's like the thinker, the planner, the philosopher, right? So it kind of, but it can create one who's very secretive. And but sometimes like there's just that feeling of being misunderstood, right? That can leave them kind of like with that little energy coming on too strong, that can kind of lead to like isolation, right? But yeah, I think like it does give some deep contemplation, like towards like like your Sag self, like the meaning of life, existence in general, um, which may have been like sometimes it's like repressed early on or pushed back, um, but then it gets easier with age, right? After the Saturn return. I've seen a lot of 12th house Saturn people having like issues with their father. Now we'll get to this, but yeah, I mean, it's 29 degrees, so you are like, the elder, right? You are the elder, which is interesting because in Vedic astrology, since me and you have the same moon, you literally are the nakshatra Jyeshta, which is literally the elder. How fucking crazy is that? I don't know if your sun would be that too, but sun is not that important in Vedic compared to moon. So you're what I am. I have a tattoo, Jeshta. I can't fucking angle my arm to have you see it, but it says Jeshta. My name's Jesse. And that is the elder, right? Um, so yeah, that's cool. And people, yeah, so people, definite force to be reckoned with. Now let's see if they're okay. So Chiron, Uranus, Sun. So that's the T square. Um, so the Sun square Chiron, right? We can start there. It is just speaking to so like with the sun and the moon the same sign, typically the parents themselves, kind of see life the same. I've seen very few divorced parents who have like new moon kids who have divorced parents. I've seen it very rarely. Although I've seen it. I have seen it. Um I even just thought of Jake Paul and Logan Paul, who just for just for the record, I'm not a fan of Logan Paul or Jake Paul. I used to kind of like Logan, but then I realized, nah, fuck Logan. Um, you probably don't even know who they are. They're just like YouTubers, and yeah. I mean, Logan's okay. Jake, they're just like very okay people, like just like they're not like bad, but they're not just like great, and I don't know, they're just like they just like market themselves in ways, but they're both new moon. So new moon, I see lots of famous people in today's world is new moon having the same sun and moon, because Jake is a double Capricorn and Logan's double Aries. Yeah, whatever. And then KSI, who's another one of the most famous YouTubers, a double Gemini. And then his brother is who's another really famous YouTuber, is a double Sagittarius. Yeah, it's interesting. Because there can be like, yeah, a lot of concentrated energy in that area. So, okay. Well, before I say that, I just have to say that, like, if you're not able to travel, if you're not able to experience different cultures, you might feel very, you'll get very frustrated if you're not able to feel like you're constantly expanding. So in partnerships, that has to be an emphasis, right? That's like so fucking important. Okay, so with this T square, right? Because it shoots out in guess where? Gemini. So the resolution point is in Gemini. So what is high vibe Gemini? So high vibe Gemini is being super curious and a social butterfly who doesn't just take things for what they are, doesn't just watch the news and believe that. Like they go and they search different, they talk to this person, that person, this person, that person. Um, and think of like an actual legit, really good wordsmith, communicator slash journalist who is rare in today's world, but someone who is really, really open-minded, willing to be wrong. That's huge. Willing to be wrong, because with there can be such an identification with your philosophies that they become a part of who you are, which is fucking dangerous, right? Um, so with your Juno being on your South Node, your relationships romantic are gonna be very, very faded also. Um, and you'll definitely prefer to be married to someone who is like your adventure buddy, who also, you know, can, who you can really share that kind of philosophy. You don't have to have the same philosophies, but who you can kind of like have that philosophical kind of like merging with of sorts, right? And yeah. So with the sun in Chiron, that's just like the father wound, right? And with Chiron being in Pisces, in the first house, I just think that even though you do have the double fire, um, it's like every time you try to express your kind of your authentic essential, every time you try to express that authentic be that authentic kind of part of you, um, you get rejected, right, when you're growing up. And there's lots of trouble with Chiron Pisces people gaining. It goes back to that, yeah, like that difficulty with identifying their own identity. And Pisces risings get projected on so much, right? So there can be, it's a double sag, always gotta watch out to not identify too much with your philosophies and uh your views, right? Like the kind of like intellectual ego thing, which, because like then the last thing you want to become like is like the scientist who's like unable to accept innovation, like at the school here, like the main guy in the psychology school like literally told like the students, I wasn't there, I would have fucking got up and just smacked them. No, I'm joking, but like he like literally said like this girl that was in a different class from me, like if there's anyone that um like talks about horoscope, like they'll get banned or like kick them out of the class, something like that. I don't know. So there is a lot of like ego and fear in that community. It's really funny, even though astrology has been proven empirically. It's just like, you know, yeah, we're just not gonna look at that. Yeah, yeah. But anyways, I don't think that's how you go. And anyways, I go forward. So, the seventh house, with all these squares, the moon square is the most difficult. Moon square Uranus, it just makes one really want to stand out from the crowd, very rebellious, very exciting, intuitive, but yeah, very stubborn. And stubborn in their efforts to be different sometimes, right? With the sun square Uranus, it can create someone, very kind of like very, very determined to be their own person, to kind of separate from their parents and from who they're supposed to be. And they want to do things their own way. And they'll go dig in anyone's heels who tries to stop them, right? But it's also like very, very prominent in people, like great leaders. And also a lot of people with that, like they have like a very special, unique kind of life purpose. And it can be like later in life that it kind of makes sense and it all comes together, right? So with the Pluto square moon, that's one of the hardest ones in astrology. It can just yeah, it creates like a very, very intense, like there can be like lots of wounding around the mother, a very like kind of domineering mother. um Emotional dramas can come up. And yeah, so power becomes like a very important word, right? Because like with the sun square Pluto also, it can make controlling emotions really, really important. And you have lots of the volcanic aspects to talk about in my post, right? You have Sun square Mars too. Um, so there's a big need to like learn compromise and to learn that true power comes from within. True power comes not from your ability to kind of like influence people and all that, or like kind of, yeah, like the low vibe of power is, what the low vibe of power is, right? I have to explain that. Um, but another thing with the Uranus and all this other energy is like the potential for accidents. Sun square Mars also, like, you are a major risk taker, which has served you well in past life. Um, but like discerning the difference between like assertiveness and aggression, so there's a big need like of this chart to have like a creative or like a physical kind of outlet, right? Um, so yeah, like my mom, for example, she plays tennis all the time. She's older than you. She's like 10 years older or 8 years older. Um, yeah, there needs to be like a healthy outlet for like the kind of that vest, that fire, or it can just like burn other people and kind of ruin relationships. Um, so yeah, that whole kind of seventh house, um, clash. So basically, like the essence of it all is that there's a big potential for the relationships, um, the romantic relationships, that search for perfectionism, right? Also is a big theme there, to clash with your public persona and who you're trying to become on that level. Um, you know, so um, but then the Chiron square is on the other side, right? So like that makes it like there's a huge need for Sun square Chiron people to dive into their childhood wounds, connected with the father, and the one with the moon, it squares the moon too. So also with the wound connected with either both parents. Um, and because there can be like a lack of confidence, right? A lack of understanding who you are. But ultimately, a Pisces Chiron person is in the first house, could be like literally a spiritual healer of some sort, right? Um, with tons of empathy, for other people, and tons of compassion because they've been through shit, Um, especially like the moon Chiron, I often see that as like people who are very misunderstood by their mother. Um, and it's like they have to go through the great lengths to like kind of rise above that pain that brings, right? So the first 30 years can be very, very difficult in defining who am I, right? And then with relationships, it can kind of bring up that energy of like, um, you know, and that's why I think that like if we do use series in creating a Kai aspect, that the Neptune Venus conjunction at the apex would be, like that creative outlet, right, would be like the most important part, and would be where you can really, really kind of find this kind of sweetness, right? um and resolve a lot of this, right? It's kind of like what stands in the middle of these. uh, the middle would be, yeah, it's a little bit hard to pin that one down. It would probably be at the start of Scorpio, but still, yeah, yeah. But a lot of darkness in relationships, but a lot of fate in relationships. There can be lots of projection in them, and the issues kind of that were prominent with the father, with the mother, can, definitely come up early on, and then when unresolved, like if unresolved, there can be that kind of like putting that on the partner, like kind of that displacement, right? But Mars, in the descendant in Virgo, Mars in Virgo is like a difficult placement for sure. Because I mean, it's very like it's very good for just like success, because it creates someone who just like is able to just like pin down on the details, right? And it's conjunct Uranus. Okay, it's conjunct Uranus. That's a little bit of saving grace, and Pluto. But like, um, Pluto, yeah. So, um, I'm gonna say this. Don't take it the wrong way. It's just a potential, right? But Pluto, Mars, seventh house, like there can be potential for like domestic abuse. Um, but it's not necessarily like it's not. It could be like it's not necessarily you receiving it. It could be you giving it. Um, and because the Venus is in Scorpio and there's that component, it can be psychological, even though it isn't in the tangible Earth sign Virgo. Um, but the low vibe of Mars in Virgo is just being petty. Um, my brother has this, and it's literally the most annoying thing ever. Now, you are not my brother at all. You have, not that he's a good person, but like he has a very difficult, like you have a difficult chart in your own way. Like his is not no fire, right? So his Mars and Virgo, like it's just like so petty, and just like kind of like looking for like the negatives, right? And noticing those and calling them out. So it's all a projection. But when it gets integrated, I've met people with Mars and Virgo, when it's integrated, there is this real perfectionist. Like that's one thing I've always noticed, that there is like that real deep inner critic, right? Um, Now, the fact that it's conjunct Uranus is very important, because that can create, so, once again, a risk taker, a very, very like, you know, a need for excitement, in relationships in the seventh house, right? A need for change, a need for yeah, for excitement and for taking risks. Um, a lot of people with Mars, like this is like a lot of athletes would have like this kind of like energy, right? Mars, Uranus, Pluto. Um, but there's like it's so much energy that there's a need to learn that self-discipline. So like this is actually like kind of better that it's in Virgo, because Virgo is all about discipline, right? The Mars and Virgo people, they definitely can figure like so this actually kind of helps you in a sense, because I told you about the Sag energy, how that kind of like makes you just like way above, and like it kind of pushes away at like you're like, what details, but the Mars and Virgo person is able to really see those details, um and have lots of discipline in terms of how they direct their energy, and yeah. um so yeah. um yeah, Mars, Pluto, I mean, look, you are a powerhouse. Like your aura is probably massive, like just the energy you are is, it's so fiery that I wonder if it doesn't, like if you don't have like an outlet. This is why like with the kite aspect, that now yeah, I'm calling it a kite aspect. I'm using series in this aspect pattern, um right? Like the Venus Neptune conjunction, right? About like that part of you, like the inspiration meeting with the artistic ability, you know, having an outlet like that, or having like a that plus like kind of like a very dialed down daily routine, it's gonna really, really help. And of course, like, with all these aspects, like with the Pluto square sun and moon, especially moon, there's a need, like that person like has been exposed to kind of um the darker side of reality. And they can have like very, very compulsive kind of, emotional and behavior patterns, right? Like dark, kind of like there can be like very, very self-destructive behaviors, right? So they have to like do a lot of therapy or just lots of like soul searching to find like that deeply kind of buried pain. Because it comes from a very hidden place. So self-control is very, very difficult, right? You're like a freaking like a carriage with like 9 horses. And it's like you're trying, like, so it takes time to figure out how to control it and how to harness all that energy in a way that's good, right? Um, so yeah, like I said, like Pluto moon, there's the overly interfering mother is common. A lot of times there's like kind of like this ancestral. Okay, I just lost my hotspot. But I say this in okay, I just lost my hotspot. I think it's back now. Okay. I say this in so many of my readings that like a lot of my clients are people who are meant to break the generational curse in their family, right? So you are so capable, right? But you've taken on a very, very rough karma, a very, very difficult karma. Um, and each hard aspect, especially to the moon, which is like kind of how we live within ourselves, is difficult, to have like so many to the sun and the moon is so hard. And so those outlets are really where, you know, greatness can come. Um Now, um back to the idea of the kite, right? The opposition kind of gives you that what's the word? That drive and that kick to actually go and like make the change, right? So um with Jupiter opposing it, it's not a difficult opposition. um but what can happen is that it can create someone who can be kind of like extravagant, over the top, over expansive, um and like basically there's like a need to learn moderation, right? um so yeah. um and then but the real, the real, like if you like Chiron, the real T square, the T square here is like the biggest part, right? Like yeah, the kite, like if you use series, um does have some deep meaning, but like it's not even close to as important as Chiron, which is literally squaring your sun, your moon, and then that being the liaison for the square with Pluto, Uranus, right? So that T square is fucking nuts, right? And it is the defining point of this whole chart. Um, and basically, the fact that it shoots out in Gemini in the fourth house on your north node just doubles down on how important the north node is and how important going back, like there is a literal purpose. for you to go into the childhood, for you to go back into the past, right? And this is the difficulty with Sag people, is that they're very future oriented. You know, Sag being one of the superpowers is that we are able to create meaning, right? So if something bad happens and we say, oh, well, you know, like, I can learn from that, you know, like the lesson is blah, blah, blah. So, um, you know, it's important to also understand that there are traumas that are meant to be felt, right? There are traumas that are meant to be felt, and sometimes Sag moons kind of, you know, push past them too much. So yeah, but yeah, I'm very curious to hear kind of like the interplay of that. Now, third house Jupiter, by itself, you know, you have you legitimately have the gift of gab. It gives a very expansive mind, um, and it's in Jupiter, so that's very good for, you know, acquiring. You know, it's very good for material success. But with Jupiter in Taurus, you have to watch out for overindulgence in the things that feel good, the sensual things. You know, so watching out for hedonism is an extreme. Not saying that's happening. Um, but yeah, once the self is truly defined through deep spiritual inquiry, through deep psychological inquiry, whatever it is, which, you know, having that Sag in the 10th house with the sun and moon, you know, that should play a role in your dharma, in your career, in your life path. That so yeah, hopefully like you're able to find, or you've been able to find like a job slash career where it enabled you um to always feel like you're growing and learning through it. That's so important, right? Because like I said, yes, you are meant, like for to fully succeed, there is a need to go back into the past, but not live in the past, right? So Gemini is about inquiry. So being curious, how you know, how could this dynamic in my family from early on have affected me in this relationship, right? It's a classic um you know, example of the potential for unresolved issues from childhood playing out in the seventh house, right? With Pluto in the seventh house, Mars in the seventh house, right? Relationships. But you know, Pluto in the seventh house makes it so you experience those deep transformations in the relationship, right? And that there's lots, your soul evolves through them, and they're very fated because it's on your vertex, which is the fate point, right? Vertex in Virgo, you know, so also we talk about service, right? The idea of being of service, and also of having like kind of like a consistency in your life, right? Which the Virgo Mars will help out. But at the same time, yeah, Mars is in Virgo, but it's conjunct Uranus. So that adds like a touch of a kind of Uranus or Aquarius energy to it, right? So it's finding that balance between like being different, you know, outside the box kind of person, and being you know, and being consistent, right? So Uranus, and then Uranus in the seventh on its own is going to create someone who, you know, who wants kind of a very unconventional type of relationship, right? Who, you know, so then that's what's really interesting is, and I see this as a split, is that the Venus in Scorpio in love typically can, you know, at its lowest can be a little bit possessive, um right? But it's all about, it's very romantic, very much about like kind of two souls combining to create one, right? um so you know, freedom within relationships becomes extremely important, um extremely important. um you might resonate with my post, the Aquarian relationship, my idea of like, you know, how a lot of divorces happen because people don't give each other that much, enough space, and just how like even like taking energetic breaks from one another can be very, 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 very huge and prominent. So that split, right, is between those two, right? Between that kind of Scorpio desire to two souls to merge, link with Neptune, which is like gives the potential for like the most romantic types of relationships, and then that kind of perfectionism that exists in relationships, of wanting that perfect partner, but then also once you get that person, the sign Virgo could be, Virgo / Pisces, that axis, like people with that kind of energy can be, very like big in terms of your fate. And don't take that as in me saying you're supposed to marry a Virgo or Pisces, right? Virgo does rule your seventh house though, so and it's a sign that provides a level of stability, and yeah, but it does square, Virgo squares your sun and your moon, and so does Pisces. But yeah, Virgo is a very surprising sign, very, very misunderstood sign because people see, oh, Virgo, Virgo, Virgo. No, Virgos can be some of like the most spiritual people ever. Um, but yeah, like a Uranus, yeah, like seventh house Uranus, yeah. Um, and then Mars in seventh house, it just gives like a strong drive to have lots of intimate relationships, not lots like at once, just like it gives that drive to have them, but then you want to remain independent when you're in them. So it's like it's very interesting. And then yeah, there can be an energy of like potentially coming on very, very strong and then pulling back, and then yeah. So it's complex, but and then of course you add the dynamics of the moon square Uranus, which can in relationships really it can literally feel like it can feel like the person is like in a prison if there's any kind of clinginess in the relationship or any kind of control. And they can feel like relationships start to become a prison. They can start to think like, oh, like I need a way out, you know? Um, so yeah. Um, mm, yeah, I think like just like with Palace and 11th in Capricorn, just the idea of benefiting humanity. You have that great ability with using your voice, and merging kind of like the intuitive intelligence with like the kind of cognitive normal intelligence. So yeah. Um, so yeah, also I think like that Earth energy you have with the Mars and Virgo and the Mercury house in Capricorn, you're able to really like kind of like possess like that ability to kind of like have structure to your thoughts and to your communications, right? And your mind can cope very well with plans and kind of like the step-by-step basis, right? Um, but yeah, like Black Moon Lilith in Capricorn, oftentimes like the kind of like way that can play out is being like overly domineering, overly ambitious, and some people who have that like it's just like it's just a potential, right? Um, where like sometimes they'll like do anything to like get to the top, but at the same time, like I said, it's like witch energy, and it's on your Mercury, so it's like it's you think in that way, and you have a very, very, very deep ability to kind of defend the causes you really believe in, and um be a spokesperson for the people who don't have a voice. So yeah, so I mean, overall, take a bath and make a sister. Overall, no squares to the nodes. Venus is also opposite Chiron, okay. And then no, Mars is, excuse me. So, I think Mars opposite Chiron to me is all about like being your own worst enemy, right? And a lot of times people with that like home felt kind of like a battlefield early on. And yeah, it can really feel like people kind of like plotting against you to kind of like stop you from achieving success. Now also there's a level of yeah, like that there's a real level of kind of self-sabotage here, right? Now with Mars and Virgo, it's that like that that perfectionism of 0 or 100. If I can't get 100, I quit. Or being like very, very like you're like super critical of the self, right? So that there has to be awareness shined on that and being okay with just doing the best you can do each day. If it's 100 one day, cool. If it's 70 the next, cool, right? Um, but with all these Chiron aspects, integrated, you become such a empathetic, compassionate person, right? Um, but yeah, just that seventh house in general, I think like there's yeah, I mean I really do think that what happens in relationships can reveal what might be unconscious um and hidden um kind of the deep kind of beneath the surface kind of buried wounds. They'll come out in relation will come out in those relationships. Now also um it's important to say that let me think about that first. you know just the fact that there's so much in the 10th, so much in the 7th, even in the ninth, even the 11th, right? Those are all above the horizon. And beneath the horizon, there's literally Chiron and Jupiter, right? And that's where your north node is. So it's very natural for you to be very public, for you to be very out there and even ninth house like Venus, they can um I actually really your ninth house is very interesting, right? Because um even if like someone tried to like indoctrinate you, not someone like if society tried to like the Neptune in the ninth, it will give that very spiritual outlook. So, but there can also be like a perfectionism in terms of like searching for the perfect philosophy, but it can, it can drive one towards, just like studying so much and then traveling so much and just like all these things, right? Which is, you're a double side for a reason. Like on some level, you are meant to still, you know, to to still exist in that way. You really are, obviously. I mean, but and then Venus in the ninth, it gives that urge to kind of understand the world, and it's also like, you know, good for finding love abroad. But overall, with the fourth house north node and like nothing else in it, nothing in the second, nothing, Jupiter in the third, but yeah. It's like obviously the purpose is the conscious purpose is in what you're doing for your for your career slash dharma. um but without going deep within, um and really kind of visiting, kind of like with Pluto, that journey to the underworld, and really becoming consciously aware of all the psychological issues and that death rebirth transformation that needs to happen, right? With Uranus, I think a lot of that integration is about accepting, is like learning to kind of kind of hold one's kind of hold yourself back, like that part of you that just needs to be like very rebellious and different. um and kind of like push it into like your humanitarianism and just your love for the causes you believe in, and just like being able to feel in the emotions, and really like, yes, you're future oriented. Yes, Sagittarians can can have very traumatic and difficult um life, but then like see it from like the top of the metaphoric mountain and be like, this was the point of it. But there still is the need to really feel those emotions. Allow, if it's anger, allow that anger to come out. If it's sadness, because anger is literally just sadness. Like psychologically, like anger is just like almost a defense mechanism over sadness, right? It's just like it's a layer over it. Underneath all anger is sadness, right? As we know. So because like you see people who are super super angry, and intuitively that um if that person were to just stage one, get past the anger. Okay, what's the emotion that's making you angry? Obviously, right? So, and then they cry, and then that aura softens. Um, each time that the person's able to kind of like confront that. So, yeah. Um, and just like being okay with being different, being okay with being different, and with with that aspect of yourself is very changeable, and um that kind of the tendency to just like always want the new and shiny. um and yeah, like I said, the moon Chiron, it's usually like a like a trauma, emotional wounding from the mother usually. And so it's about like really like with the root chakra, like do I feel safe in this world, right? And like really like, so yoga could be like amazing for these types of aspects, right? Because a lot of moon Chiron people will feel like their relationships with women will be quite difficult, but then you also have it with the sun. So There can be like abandonment issues that can come out in the relationships, right? And with the Venus in Scorpio, it can really, on a low vibe, lead to kind of a level of possessiveness. So the integrated version of this chart is someone who is inquisitive, someone who is, you know, who has gone into their wounds, and really dealt with them, taking responsibility for what they've had to take responsibility for, understood, gone deeper into metaphysics and into, different ways of seeing reality and understanding karma and all that, right? Doesn't excuse, you know, like if you, like, for example, knew your past life with certain people who've hurt you in this life, like it can kind of like help on some level, right? But oftentimes, like my girlfriend who's not here, she, has a very well, no relationship with her father, her birth father in this life. But I'm not gonna like reveal too much. But she, like, like you know, we were able to find out that in a past life, she basically did something horrible to him, you know. So everything comes full circle, right? And I think that her learning that, it didn't, change that disgrace she has towards, I'm not gonna go into her stuff, but it did help her kind of like see how the universe works, right? And not play victim, and to just kind of understand that, like, shit, like if that's true, then, like, um, do you really want to just keep going around? And that goes through like the, any cycle that's showing up in the family too, which often these types of aspects are very like karmic and in the bloodline and compulsive. So, you know, if you want to be the one to break, to break that, it's a very big task. But I can tell you that the two areas where the healing comes, well, there's three, are one, in that deep spiritual relationship with yourself, almost like a inner inquisitiveness, right? In terms of the emotions, like an emotional dialogue with self. And with respect to relationships, and understanding that the relationships can never be perfect. You can never meet someone that's perfect. But that the people that do come along are very fated. Like I said, Juno exact conjunction, exact to the degree with the South Node. And the South Node squares Pluto. How did I not say that? It does. So the South Node squaring Pluto and Uranus, and Mars. There's karmic skip steps are around, like there's a lot of past life trauma that you have. I have the same thing. So I wrote my book Pisces Live Nine Lives, that the trauma I experienced in this life could not be shown by any of the events and circumstances of this lifetime. So maybe you feel that in some sense, but at the same time, in this chart, you have a lot of the hard aspects that would make me think that it would be like it's all very karmic, but it's a replication of past life dynamics. And then with the Uranus, that is about like past life conditioning, right? And about like not like that, like you literally like are like, I guarantee, like I almost guarantee that you have like the energy of like, a witch, like the witch kind of, um trauma, right? So yeah. And just not yeah, like not have not having been allowed to almost like exist as an individual in past lives, and forced to kind of like, yeah, and with Black Mirror, yeah, where it is, yeah. So it just makes me think that there could be some trauma linked to being a witch burned alive or something, because I have that too. Trust me, Pluto square South Node is no joke. Um, all right, so let's look here. Um, okay. Yeah, Zosma. No, so another big potential with the seventh house. Seventh house also rules open enemies. So there's a big time potential for um with Mars and Pluto in that house of you know your expansive self, creating kind of jealousy, and with that Black Widow conjunct Mercury, which can, yeah, create adversaries, right? um but yeah, it's important for you to align yourself with friends who really kind of see it. I don't want to see it how you do, but who stand for. I just think that groups, um aligning with your current purpose are very, very strong. um so looking. Ooh, Aphrodite conjunct Venus, nice. So that gives beauty. That is giving beauty. um so very well aspected, or nice astros around Venus. um Zubenel Shaloming, so you can literally, yeah, you could be an alchemist, like working with like herbs and different potions. And you have Atlantis conjunct your sun. So this lifetime could be very, very linked to a lifetime in Atlantis. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, I am not someone who has gone into that. Um, but I have brought it up when it's just like really, really, really like it's right on your sun. And people have like told me in the follow-ups, like, yeah, like I've had like, psychic readings or whatever, like where that's been like prominent, or I've had dreams or something like that. So, um, but yeah, like sun and moon both on the midheaven. I mean, that's just like crazy because like, yeah, just the career being so important. And I just wonder like if like who your parents were. Just curious. Like, were they both like, is it like both super powerful people? Was it like a battle of influence over you? I don't even know. But either way, like it's like like what if you were like the son of like Bill and Hillary Clinton, like that? Um, just like two my point in saying that was two very, very like obviously you're not, but like, yeah, two very, very um big people. Um, okay. So yeah, that is all I got. So I'm not sure if you have the follow-up. Let's check. Yeah, you paid for that in advance with the current Astro, of course. That's why I moved you up. Um, so cool. So yeah, we can so take your time with this. So yeah, you do have a very, very not bad. It's a chart that, and it's interesting that my last two have been like this, where I've said at the end, your chart is very, very, very like unique, very, very interesting, and what I would consider like a tough chart in terms of like there's so many different ways it could go, especially when you involve like the karmic stuff, the nodes. So yeah, really look forward to talking to you and to kind of puzzling everything together. Um, and seeing how your lived experience matches up with everything here. So um yeah, 2 hours. I can never. Anyways, thank you so much, and we shall talk soon. All right, ciao.